Connelly. I'm from Spalding here. I was living in Grand Island, graduated high school, joined the Navy. I had like 6 years in the Navy, and I was stationed in Pennsylvania on a special project. And I flew in anti-submarine warfare, flying off carriers and that. And so our project was done in Pennsylvania, so we was all trying to get orders. And there was a new squadron that we did the basic work to get the squadron up, VO 67. And it was going to Vietnam, and I wanted to go to it. And so I put in my dream sheet. My old pilot, he was down in Washington, and he called me up one night. He says, Connelly, he said, I can't get you that VO 67. They ordered all these people in, and I got too many people, and they ordered them out. But I got this other squadron, HAL-3, and I go, HAL-3, what's that? He says, Helicopter Attack Light Squadron. I said, well, the Navy don't have any of those squadrons. He says, well, they do now. This is in July of 67. And HAL-3 got commissioned in July of April of 67, and actually got commissioned. So anyhow, I said, what do they do? He said, well, they're helicopters over in Vietnam. I said, no, they're not on a carrier, are they? He said, no, they're in country. I said, well, can an enlisted man fly? And he said, yeah. I said, well, what does an enlisted man, what kind of equipment does he operate? Because I used to operate electronic equipment. He said, they shoot a machine gun. So I said, send me. So that's how I got to Vietnam. He sent me. And all these other guys had training. He sent me straight to the squadron. So I was in maintenance for 6 months. And then they had a little gunner school, they called it. And basically it was just about the aircraft and the different tolerances on the helo that we had to learn to pre-flight them and stuff. And so I went out on the attachment. I was off of LST. And my first flight I was an E6. Military people understand what I'm talking about. I was E5, and I made E6 while I was out there about a month later. But I had an E3 was teaching me. So I went in the plane, I had the machine gun, and we got airborne, and that was my training. I didn't get no training. That's the first time I shot the machine gun when we flew that day. And then I left, one flight we'd put in a strike, we was up by the Cambodian border, and PBRs got ambushed. So we went in and put an airstrike in, and we was coming back around to always fly into the wind to make an attack. So if you get hit, you got airspeed and that. So we was flying what we call downwind to come back in for another attack. And we're sitting in the open door of the helo. We got our gun, and you got your foot pressed up against the forward part of the door jamb. There's a wind screen up there to kind of keep some of the wind off you when you're shooting. And so we're flying up there, and it's dark. You can't see nothing. And I heard this big bang, and I felt my foot. And I felt stuff hit my face. And I go, damn. I said, they blew my shit off. I said, we got hit. And they said, where'd you get hit? I said, right where my foot was. I said, they blew my foot off. They said, well, how are you? He said, look, how's your foot? I said, I don't know. I don't want to look. So anyhow, when I looked down, my foot was there, and there was feathers in the plane. A bird had hit right where my foot was, and the blood was all over me and that. So that was one of the funnier things. And we had what we call a cook-off. My gun jammed, and so you set it down and you pull back the lever. And I looked down and I saw the bullet just land, and then it exploded. And I had glasses, I wore glasses so I could see. And then we had a visor over from the hard hat that we wore. Well, the visor was black. My glasses were black, I couldn't see through them. And what happened, that shell exploded, and all that gunpowder and stuff came up, and I looked like a raccoon. You know, everything's black except around my eyes where my glasses were at. So a lot of stuff happened up there that wasn't really, you know, actually shooting at each other, you know, shooting at the enemy. That a lot of stuff happened. And one thing about I had a new door gunner. Tony hates this, but he was from New York, just above New York City. So we're out on we're flying, and he was just training. I got him in the seat for the first time to shoot, and we're flying around. Well, we start receiving fire, and there's a field out there, and there's a little haystack there. And so we told him, shoot, Tony, shoot. And he said, you know, he wouldn't shoot, so I started to put the spare gun together to start shooting. And they told him, shoot the haystack, shoot the haystack. So anyhow, he finally opened up, and so we got back to the ship, and so we got all cleaned up and stuff. And I said, come here, Tony, I want to talk to you. I said, what happened up there? Did you freeze or what? He said, no, I didn't. I said, well, we told you to shoot. He said, there's nothing to shoot at. I'm looking down there. There ain't nobody down there, none. I said, we told you to shoot the haystack. Well, come to find out, he didn't know what a haystack was. So after that, anytime for the next month, anytime we flew over, we saw a haystack, we'd low level around it. Say, Tony, that's a haystack. And then I left HAL 3 in May of '69, and I extended my tour over there, and I went to this Operation Duffel Bag, and I told you about that VO-67 that we was working on that. Well, instead of doing it by airplanes, this Operation Duffel Bag, we put sensors in the jungle by hand. We'd walk in and plant the sensors. We had aqua buoys, which you could hear what was going on. We had seismic units and magnetic units and that. And, you know, you could hear the enemy down there talking at night and stuff like that. We'd call in artillery, and they would, and you see all the movies, you see the movies of the artillery coming in. That's what that sounds like exactly, because that's what I was hearing on my, you know, those transmitters, was those mortar rounds and artillery rounds going in, and it's got that whistle and everything. Of course, the language the people down below were saying wasn't too clean, because they were getting slaughtered down there. And then I ended up spending, I got out of the Navy for 85 days. You're allowed 90 days. You can go back in and keep everything the same. And after 85 days, I went down and begged that guy to get me out of there. I got to get back. And then I ended up doing 21 in the Navy.